Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Alameda County Budget 101. My name is Jesper Dosena. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the community organizing manager at Alameda County Community Food Bank. And I'm joined by my colleague Jessica Montez, who uses she, her, pronouns and is the government affairs officer. We're really excited to spend this time with you and to learn about how our county's budget works and why it matters for food justice, and most importantly, how all of us can take action to shape it. So before we get started, just a quick show of like hands. Who here has been to a county budget meeting or heard about Measure W before? Sounds great. Yeah, I'm seeing quite a few hands. That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, wonderful. So whether this is like a new or familiar, we'll make sure that everyone leaves with the tools to take action. We can move on to the next slide. First time. Thanks, Manuel. Awesome. And then we're going to be taking questions at the end, if that's okay. So here's what we'll cover tonight. Why this moment matters, key priorities and challenges. We'll talk about Measure W and SNAP, as well as how the county budget works, and most importantly, how we can take action together. And these are some of the topics for today's discussion. But at ACCFB, we always start with community agreements to guide how we can learn and share together. So tonight, let's agree to these community agreements right here, which are mutual respect and care, inclusion, and that everyone belongs here. We can move on to the next one. And neutrality. This is a really important one. We're a nonpartisan organization and cannot, when any food banker is working, clocked in, on site, or otherwise representing the food bank, make comments favoring or opposing any political party or candidate for elected office. We also remember not to assume that our colleagues and neighbors share our political views and that the views of someone represents, like professionally, are necessarily the same as their personal views. And then we also have community agreements around privacy and confidentiality. What's said in this space, for the most part, stays in this space. We're going to be doing recording, so hopefully that's okay with everyone. And if not, just let me know. And then we also have a community agreement over we over I. Um, so does anyone want to like add a community agreement that they feel would keep the space more grounded, or do these all sound really great?
I heard one recently about don't yuck my yum. So just because I feel positive about something doesn't mean somebody else doesn't feel positive. So to make sure that they kind of, listen to what I'm saying as I would give them the same respect and listen to them.
I love that, Donna. Thank you so much for encouraging respect. Any others? We'll take one more. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So why are we here right now? Because the county is making a lot of big decisions about where our dollars go, and about Measure W funds, which are meant for housing, health, and other social services like food. And then they're being debated right now. And just last week, we saw a discussion about whether these funds will actually reach the communities most impacted by hunger, including immigrant communities who often face additional barriers to accessing services. On top of that, we're facing federal threats like proposed SNAP cuts and anti-immigrant policies that could limit access to essential resources like food. And this makes our county level advocacy more urgent than ever, especially to protect the rights and the well-being of all residents, regardless of their immigration status as well. Go on to the next slide. So at Alameda County Community Food Bank, we believe that food is a basic human right. We're shifting from solely being a charity model more towards becoming more of a food justice model. So, where food isn't just simply distributed, but it also is part of a justice model where community voices drive systemic change. And that's why you're all here, because we're about building power, and that means more meals as well as more justice. And this here is a diagram of our policy and advocacy team's theory of change. It's simple. It's really grounded here at the bottom of the triangle in community organizing, that relationship building, that education, building power and organizing, and then mobilizing people to speak out. And then once we do that, we believe that we can mobilize people over to Jessica and our colleague Easer's work to really allow community members to speak to their local elected officials to hold them accountable, and then also to partner with them, but also to put pressure on them to make sure that they're doing their jobs well. And then if we do that, if we do this community organizing and that policy advocacy, we really do believe that we can transform systemic hunger, which we know is rooted in poverty and racism. And then we can shift narratives and demystify what are the deeper reasons behind why hunger exists and why it happens. And we can shift status quos around mobilizing and co-leading with most impacted partners and by activating the most impacted people and communities. And we follow their lead, hopefully through direct actions. And so we don't just do this alone. Like I mentioned, we're in networks with food agencies, which include hundreds of pantries and religious organizations like churches, mosques, and we're also in coalitions and housing and tenant rights organizations, immigrant rights groups, like the ICE Out of Dublin coalition, which we are a part of, and grassroots organizations, and directly with communities members just like you all here tonight. So together, we're really stronger with our community partners. And these are just some of the types of community partners we have. So just a quick reflection from folks. I wanted to ask, what is one issue you see in your community that impacts people's ability to access food? Please feel free to come off mute or to drop it in the chat. What's one issue that you see your community that impacts people's ability to access food?
Affordability and living in food deserts.
Portability and living in food deserts. Thank you, Donna.
Also, we saw the mobility too, actually. Lots of the senior peoples doesn't have a mobility to get food. They are staying in their home, sitting in the chair, and they're thrilling to get food. So I add up on the mobility actually.
Yeah, thank you, Usha, for uplifting mobility.
Yeah.
Any others? We
Yeah,
can take
people
them.
have like pe people have like stigmas with like government programs and systems.
Yes, thank you, Nicholas. Thank you for joining us as well. Nicholas is a volunteer community organizer with our Food Justice Organizing Task Force. Thanks for being here, Nicholas. Agreed. Thank you. Awesome. We can move on to the next slide, but thank you all for, yeah, speaking up. So we're fighting for equitable food access, dignity for all families, investment in community health, and accountability in how public dollars are spent. Budgets are moral documents. They show what our leaders value, and we want those values to match our people's needs. And so these are some of the things that we're advocating for: equitable food access, dignity for all families, accountability, and investment in community. And then we know that change is possible. So over the years, our advocacy at the Alameda County Community Food Bank has led to real victories, proving that when communities organize, we can shift budgets towards justice. In 2014, ending the drug felon ban, Community advocacy successfully removed barriers preventing people with drug felony convictions from accessing CalFresh and CalWorks benefits. In 2018, expanding CalFresh eligibility, older adults and people living with disabilities receiving supplemental security income, SSI, gained access to CalFresh benefits, increasing food security for vulnerable populations. And in 2020, Measure W passed. Community-led advocacy secured a half-cent sales tax dedicated to housing, food, health programs in Alameda County. In 2021, permanent universally free school meals. Advocacy helped make school meals free for all students across California, ensuring children do not go hungry at school. And in 2021, emergency food response expanded during the pandemic. ACCFB scaled food distribution to meet unprecedented community need, reaching record levels of support. Next slide, please. And in 2022, a budget win, we increased food security funding, went over that as well. And in 2023, we had a community advocacy victory through agency partners and residents that mobilized to protect safety net programs in the county budget. In 24, we expanded food access programs and new partnerships with schools and community clinics that broadened CalFresh outreach and food justice. Just this past year, a few months ago, we won 80 million through coalition advocacy and state funding for California's food banks. 80 million, which I believe was 4 times more than what the government was, or what the governor of California was offering at the time, according to our senior policy advocate. And in 2025, we also created, community members created the Food Justice Organizing Task Force to track budgets as well as to build relationships, empower, and educate, organize, and mobilize, and push for equitable funding. So, budgets shape our communities. These are our top 3 areas so far where organized community action can make a real difference. So for new money, Measure W, what it is, I went over that it's a half-cent sales tax bringing in over 200 million a year for Alameda County. The outcome that we would like to get out of it is our goal is to ensure that Measure W and other discretionary funds are directed towards food security, housing, and other safety net programs, not criminalization. And why it matters. This is a key opportunity to push the county to fund food, housing, and care instead of criminalization of our neighbors and community members and other punitive measures. Our proposed and tentative windows to act are around September to December, mid-year updates and committee hearings, March through April of 2026, department prepare their budget requests for the next fiscal year. Early advocacy during this time is really crucial. And then I believe around like June 2026, but again, these are all tentative and proposed. There's a final budget vote that is critical to influence where our dollars go. And you can correct me if I'm wrong later, Jessica. Thanks. But the second one, everyday money. This is our general fund, what it is. The county's biggest everyday budget pot. It's over $3 billion, I believe, in discretionary funds. And the outcome and the goal that we would like to get out of it is to secure and expand investments in food justice, CalFresh outreach, immigrant and tenant rights, and other social services. And it matters because supervisors decide how much of this goes towards food access and food justice, and immigrant and tenant protections, versus other things that don't really serve our communities. Here are also some of the other tentative or proposed windows to act. And then finally, number 3, um, we're encouraging folks that another action you can take around the budget is to follow the money, oversight and accountability. Once the money is allocated, we must track whether it actually reaches communities. And the goal that we'd like to get out of that is to ensure transparency and accountability in how public dollars are spent And it matters because budget wins don't mean much if funds never reach neighborhoods that need them the most. And then here are some of the other proposed windows to take action. These three areas, new money, everyday funds, and oversight, give community members concrete points to influence the budget. When we organize, we ensure funds meet the real needs of our neighborhoods, protect immigrant rights, and build community power. Next slide, please. So each of these priorities that reflect what our community are, they really reflect what our communities are asking for. And they're not just about survival, but about justice, dignity, and the power to shape decisions that affect our communities. These are our collective demands, and this training will show how to act on them. This year, we've identified so far, and they're changing and adapting a little bit, but five key priorities so far. These aren't just abstract points. They come from conversations with agencies, clients, and community partners and members. They represent collective demands for dignity, justice, and well-being for our communities. So the first one, food justice and safety nets. Invest 12 plus $1 million in food access programs, CalFresh and SNAP outreach, Measure W and community hubs. Also fund community organizations that provide food, tenant rights, and other social services. Two, housing and immigrant justice. Prioritize permanent supportive housing as the foundation for stability and dignity. Expand immigrant protections and fight the expansion of the ICE detention center, which has been proposed at FCI Dublin in Alameda County. Three, climate and community health. We want to build resilient local food systems that ensure clean air and safety, and safe water, and strengthen disaster response infrastructure. We also want to ensure resources reach frontline communities most impacted by hunger, poverty, and environmental harm. And number four, racial equity and people power. We want to divest from incarceration and from other punitive measures, and we want to reinvest in dignity and other social services like food. We also want to center our work with Black and Brown and immigrant and low-income voices as well, because we know that they are really the true experts, and we are really the true experts to the issues that are going on in our communities. And then finally, we want to also support workforce equity, good jobs, training, and livable wage in food and care sectors. So I was wondering which of these priorities connects most to the community or the work that you all do. Um, Feel free as we go throughout this training to shout it out or to type it in the chat. But I'll give a moment for that before I go over this slide with you all. Yeah, which of those priorities connect most to our community, um, your community, and your work? Supportive services. Thank you, Donna. Can take one more maybe. Housing justice. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So where are the problems and where is the misallocation occurring in the Alameda County budget? So even as hunger grows, budget choices they often fail to meet real needs of our communities. Here's where we see misallocation of resources in Alameda County. So one out of every four Alameda County residents face hunger, yet food access programs remain significantly underfunded. Many families, especially immigrant households, struggle to put enough food on the table. Public protection does not always equal public assistance. We have found and we see that law enforcement receives nearly the same amount of funding, nearly the same, um, as safety net services, despite vastly different outcomes. Cuts hit food banks hard. A loss of federal USDA food forces the food bank to spend about 1 million per month on food. That's 4 times the amount of pre-pandemic costs, and this strain reduces the ability to invest in other community supports. Emergency food is underfunded. County investment has not scaled with increased demand or federal cuts affecting low-income and immigrant families. And then finally, there are structural issues that are ignored. The budget lacks meaningful investment in root causes of hunger, including housing, immigrant protections, and other social services as well. These gaps show that hunger isn't just about immediate food, it's about equity, justice, and how public dollars are prioritized. Misallocation can create unnecessary hardship, especially for immigrant communities, families with children, and other frontline groups. By understanding where the budget falls, we can organize to push for real change. You can go on to the next slide. Thank you. And then we also wanted to go over Measure W with you all. It's a major tool for funding food, housing, and health programs in Alameda County. And here's the story so far. It is a 10-year half-cent sales tax designed to generate general revenue for the county with a focus on food security, housing, and other social services. Measure W was placed on the ballot in November of 2020, 5 years ago, and then passed narrowly with a 50.09% of the vote. After the election, implementation stalled due to litigation, and despite this, taxes began being collected in July 2021. The legal challenges, however, were ultimately unsuccessful, and the process continued with Measure W fully moving forward in April 2025. And this matters because Measure W represents a community-led win. It's showing that organized advocacy can secure resources for critical needs. But we also need to continue to ensure that these funds reach the people and the programs that in most need. And Measure W is an example of how organized communities can win for essential services, even in the face of legal and other challenges. Our role now is to track and to influence how this money is allocated, and so it goes to food and housing and other social services, um, and not other profit-driven kind of interests as well. You can move on to the next slide, please. So allocation overview, there's 3 buckets a little bit. So when we talk about the county budget, it's helpful to think of it in 3 main buckets, each with a different purpose and focus. First, there's the Home Together Fund. This bucket is focused on homelessness prevention, shelters, and supportive housing. It's about ensuring everyone has a place to live, which is foundational for health, dignity, and well-being, of course. Number 2, Essential County Services Fund. This fund supports safety net and other social services, including food security programs, senior services, and other critical community supports. This is where many of the programs that directly impact people's daily lives are funded. And then number 3, Prudent Reserve. Think of this as a rainy day fund. It sets aside and manages economic downturns, unexpected shortfalls, and emergencies. While it doesn't directly fund services, it protects the county's ability to continue programs during difficult times. Understanding these buckets help us see where the decisions are made and where advocacy matters. Most of the action we want to take, making sure communities get food, housing, and support, happens in the Home Together Fund and the Essential County Services Fund. But even the Prudent Reserve can become a lever if the county faces budget pressures. Thanks, Jessica. We can go on to the next slide. HR 1, SNAP cuts to low-income residents. So SNAP isn't just a line in a budget. It's a lifeline for hundreds of thousands of Alameda County residents. 179,000 Alameda County residents received CalFresh benefits as of March 2025. What HR 1 does is it represents roughly about 20% cut, a 20% cut over the next decade. Every participant loses benefits. $7 per person per month from 2027 through 2031, and a $15 per person per month from 2032 to 2034. And we also want to keep in mind that the minimum benefit is only $23 per month. So these cuts are really significant. Some additional impact is that California loses $15 million in the federal match for CalFresh outreach. The cuts start at about a day's worth of our benefits per month, rising to almost 2 days by the end of the decade. And then ACCFB is already seeing like a historic decline in CalFresh applications due to fear and confusion in the community. And this is also related to ICE raids and immigration concerns. Regarding SNAP, Ed program impacts 1.6 million annually for Alameda County SNAP Ed program would be eliminated. Some programs that may be lost are Cooking for Health Academy, physical activity classes for seniors, 20 health retail stores, nutrition education that serves the ACCFB's network, and beyond programs. The cuts affect economic vitality for county partners, school districts, and resident champions who deliver nutrition education and health programs. So these cuts aren't abstract. They affect people in our neighborhoods every day. They will start to slowly roll out into 2027 or 2026. We're still tracking it, and it's possible that families will go hungry. Seniors might lose access to vital programming, and our community organizations are likely to lose resources that meet the rising demand. And this is why county level advocacy and organizing around food access is more urgent now than ever. I think I'll pass it along to you, Jessica. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Justward. Awesome. So Justward gave some context into different things, why we advocate for these kind of things, why it's important to track these kind of things as a team, our team, and as a food bank. So now we want to provide an overview of the actual budget process. And this is a topic that can go on for hours, so we won't do that. But we'll really just scratch the surface and provide a very sort of brief overview of it, important key highlights, just key highlights throughout the entire year-long process of it, and who these key players are, right, that make these important decisions. So, just a quick overview of the county. The county is divided into 5 different districts, in addition to several unincorporated areas. The county, or I should say, the total population is estimated to be 1.64 million, and this was as of January 2024. The county is governed by 5 different board of supervisors. The board of supervisors are responsible for providing policy direction, approving the county budget, and representing the county in several areas. About 2/3 of county budget relies on state and federal aid. And I would also make a note that if you don't know or are not sure who your representative, who your supervisor is, we could probably share that on the chat, on the notes. But I highly encourage you to look it up. And maybe not even if you live in Alameda County, and maybe not only where you live, but if you also work in Alameda County, I also encourage you to look up who the representative is there, especially if you work in a CBO, a local small agency or nonprofit. That's also very important too, to know how to try to track how that impacts your work too, and not just as a resident. So who are these key players, right? So these are 5 district supervisors for anyone who may not be familiar with them, or some of them. Fun fact, newly elected supervisor Nikki Fortunato Bass, our team actually hosted a candidate forum for her for her then candidate. That seems like so long ago. That was a year ago. That's crazy. So we hosted a candidate forum for Supervisor Bass. And I also wanted to note, and we also wanted to highlight the county administrator's office. Many folks don't realize how powerful that office is. And we often don't tend to think of the other offices other than like our city council, our mayor, and our supervisors, right? But the county administrator's office has so much power and works very closely with the board of supervisors, especially for budget season. Other important key players, of course, are agency directors. It's a ton. It's so many of them. And if you look into your actual city ones, it's a whole nother thing. I know one of the last times I looked at Oakland's, there was a lot of vacant seats. Maybe if someone lives in Oakland, maybe you could share with us at the end, but this is going to vary depending on the city, but this is just the county one. It's a lot to dive into, but I think it's also important to know some of these key players, and you'll run into them if you attend some of the board of supervisor meetings. You eventually kind of become familiar with them or what they're about, right? When you hear them give comment or be part of these conversations, especially in these important meetings. So how the budget works. This is a very brief overview of the year-long process. And so the county's fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th of the following year, July 1st to June 30th. And so they technically started on December when the Board of Supervisors begins to work together. And then I believe in January is when agencies or CBOs start becoming part of the picture. It's really in the spring where we really want to mobilize folks, community members. In the spring is where we have all the budget hearings and all of the more louder public important meetings, right? So that really starts in the spring, but the work starts technically in December. Um, and so, side note, I was working on the side on creating an actual timeline of the actual important dates. I was creating one for the county and I was creating one for some cities. Some of our priority cities have been Oakland, Hayward, some of the unincorporated areas, and some other cities, but those were like the major ones I've been focusing on. And so I was creating or have been wanting to finish an actual way more detailed timeline than this graph. So if that's interest to anyone, please do like follow up with us. Maybe after this we could chat about it. And it could be something I can promise to deliver, a more official timeline. I was creating that more for my purposes of following and tracking this work, but if it's something folks would actually want, I can make it into an actual public thing, or maybe just like another webinar like this. So just kind of a side note. This is just a very brief representation of these important dates and key months or what happens during certain months. Oh, and then also, sorry, it almost slipped my mind. Also important to remember the fiscal years change or vary depending on the city. So the county is every year, cities are different ones. I believe Hayward, I don't know, I may be confusing it with Oakland, but I think Hayward is every 2 years. I want to say Oakland is every year, but someone may correct me on that. So just another note, another important thing to keep track of is your city's budget process. I know it's a lot, but it's important. And so now diving into more of the details. So sources of the county revenue. Side note, we're focusing mainly on fiscal year 2024, mainly because the 2025 one doesn't have much detail published on the website yet. So I just figured it'd be easy to dive into what's already happened, right? What's already been allocated. So this is 2024. You kind of get an idea here on the right side of how much the county received from state aid, from federal, from property taxes, from different sources. And also, a side note, something that the supervisors have been very direct about is that none of us know what's going to happen at federal level, right? Like we all know it's chaos right now. It's a lot happening at state and federal level. And that's just the fact. And so the supervisors themselves have been very direct about that. We don't know what's going to happen, how will be impacted, how many people. And so it's really hard to really estimate even or to talk about the budget and like very firm information or firm numbers because anything could happen a month from now, right? As we've kind of been experiencing, everything changes by the day. So just a side note regarding state and federal impact. Another example here, the dollar sign visual on the left. I just thought it was a really cool example that focuses on property taxes, how much comes like throughout the county and how much goes into the county. So about 60% of Alameda County's discretionary revenue comes from property taxes. Although the county receives only about 15% of the property taxes. And you could see there on the visual that a portion that goes to schools, another portion that goes to cities, the portion that goes to the county, which reflects on the graph on the right side, the 15% from property tax revenue. So now fund distribution and allocation. I know this is very heavy. There's a lot of numbers, but I swear it's it's very cool information. I mainly put it there just as a reminder of what's provided online and made public. So on the left, you have the graph. Just introduced this earlier, but you have the graph of the fund, the actual budget amount, and also important to remember the difference between general fund and all funds. The all funds um, includes certain revenue that has reservations. It can just be easily used to allocate, right? Versus the general funds you normally that number is a little lower because it's reflecting those that amount of money that's reserved for other things. So difference between all funds and general funds. So we're just focusing on the all funds right now. And so you could see here, number one, the highest was healthcare services, allocated 25 point, it was allocated 25.9 0.9% to healthcare services, followed by the second largest public protection, which Jessford also mentioned this earlier. And then the third, right behind that, almost the same, is public assistance, 23.5. Again, this was the fiscal year 2024. On the right side, these I think are really cool. So you could see this on the website on the county administrator's website. You could see how much exactly went into not just the department, but how much went into different units within the departments. And you could see how much exactly went into that. So these are just some different examples I took screenshots of, but you could see the full report on the website. Um, and the 2025, of course, isn't there yet, but this is still like a really cool idea of how much typically has been going into it, into each department. And then, oh, I thought I had one more, but I think I imagined it. So I know that was a lot. That was very logistical, very qualitative. But now I'm going to pass it on to Jessra to talk more about not only why this is important again, but who it impacts, how and why it impacts all of us. So Jessford, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And we're making good time. We want to get people out so they can enjoy the rest of their evening and have some dinner. But so Jessica just went over the budget process. And now that we know that, we also want it would be a disservice if we didn't loop in who's most impacted, and that is Black and Brown people in our communities here in Alameda County. We know from historical inequities. Misallocation of the budget has resulted throughout decades of highest service needs from housing and other social services, and how uh, um, funds for policing and criminalization have increased. But then we also know that there's like higher needs for health and other social services. And the budget allocation affects food security as well as housing instability or housing stability and other social services. And then, of course, we know that communities of color have historically not only in the United States, but throughout Alameda County, have disproportionately been impacted by cuts to social services. We cannot look at the budget without a racial, class, or gender lens. And then also, you can also see in the budget that the public protection, which the sheriff's budget is a part of, is almost the largest portion of the budget. It's off by like 1%. And that in Alameda County, Santa Rita Jail is a major expense driver, and that there's a lot of spending on incarceration versus social services and preventative services that impact the long-term community well-being. And then many people have probably seen the map on the right, but are no stranger to how redlining and how other policies in Alameda County have, disproportionately affected Black and Brown people. And we're very familiar with the communities that are here on this map on the right. So we can move on to the next slide. I think that might be you, Jessica, or is it me? Cool. Yeah, and then also we wanted to highlight racial justice and funding and to expand on that, and that equitable allocation of funds can actually reduce disparities, obviously. And then historically underfunded programs need more investment, and community voice is critical to shape priorities. And this here is a chart and just an example um, of how racial distribution of the general population and coincides with the homeless population from 2019 in Alameda County. So in the blue, we see what different racial groups in Alameda County represent in the general population. So for African American, that's 11% in 2019 of the general population. Asian people made up for 32% of the general population. White people made up for 50%. And those who identified as Hispanic represented 22%. And then Native American and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders made up 1% each. But then in the orange, we see that although African Americans and Black people represent only 11% of the general population, we see that they represent, unfortunately, 47% of the unhoused population. And that Latinos, although they represent 22% of the population, they represent 17% of the homeless population, and then those who identified as multiracial, which are only 5% of the population, actually made up for 14% of the homeless population. So we do see through data that there is a severe racial distribution of the general population, and how it coincides with the unhoused population. And this is why equitable allocation of funds, you know, need to reduce disparities, and why programs need to be funded and there needs to be more investment so that it doesn't exacerbate these racial injustices and disparities in how the money in the budget is misallocated. We can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Jessica. So what do we need to understand about the budget to advocate effectively? Um, so we need to know that there are decision makers, and we have already learned and have heard about the revenue sources, and we also need to discuss with one another what we prioritize and what are our priorities. And then we also need to work together to see how allocations can affect communities most in need. We also need to work together to research into the timing of the hearings and the budgets, and get educated about the phases so that we can maximally influence the budget. And then that there is a lot of evidence-based proposals that increase credibility as well in how to understand the budgets and to advocate effectively. Um, and this here on the right is a cool chart of changes versus audiences and how one can get involved for more outcomes. So one can become aware, but then once that awareness is built, hopefully they have the will, and then they can act on that will. But then also we know that there's different audiences from the public to influencers and stakeholders and in the community as well as decision makers. And then we can just take like maybe a few seconds to just kind of like look at the boxes in this um, and just kind of pique our curiosity. See policy change all the way in the top right. Successful mobilization of public voices, and then collaborative action in the middle among partners. That's what we're hoping for, as well as shifting attitudes and beliefs and increasing knowledge to decision makers through visiting them. So we can move on to the next slide. Thanks, Jessica. So strategies for influencing the budget. So these are some of the strategies. You can shift public narrative and educate each other about the deeper reasons behind hunger, which are poverty and racism. You can share information. You can go with our organizers at the food bank to give classroom presentations to youth and students. You can write opinion editorials or create social media posts that highlight food justice stories. You can also think about contacting your decision makers, calling or emailing your Alameda County Board of Supervisor, and then urging them to prioritize food and other social services over criminalization of our communities and other punitive measures. You can join an organization or a coalition by bringing in new allies and friends, such as labor unions, healthcare workers, interfaith leaders, neighborhood councils, youth and orgs, and then this grows the collective power of our movement. You can also speak out publicly by delivering public comment at the Board of Supervisors meeting to make community needs visible. And then you can work with us or with other organizations to build trusted relationships and meet your county supervisors and go with Jessica to these different meetings and also meet your agency directors and staff. And thank you, Donna, to share community perspectives and solutions. And then finally, you can take bold, direct action. You can organize rallies and work with us, myself as an organizer and our other organizer, Jocelyn Vera, to organize rallies, press conferences, and other creative actions and events that show public demand for food justice and equity. So these are some of the strategies for influencing the budget.
And I do want to highlight, yes, I try to attend like all of these important meetings. So please do join me, join our team whenever you're
Available.
curious about something, or if there's an important one that we may not be aware of, let us know. You can join us. Something I always say too is that I believe we also have to do our part and be civically engaged. We have to track these important things. We have to advocate. But I also want to acknowledge that it's hard. These meetings are in the evenings, they're long, like it's not easy. It's a lot of work. Some folks have two jobs, like it's just not realistic sometimes. So I also really want to I always acknowledge that. It's such a real thing. It's not easy to always be civically engaged. But you could do it in little ways, such as being in this webinar today, reaching out to us if you just want to attend one of our events and we'll fill you in. Little things like that, registering to vote. Next week, I'm making a plug now, but next week is National Register Voter Registration Day. So that's another example of little ways, little things that go a long way that you could do on your own.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jessica. So we also wanted to go over what the food bank is organizing for. Myself, I'm an organizer. Right here in the top left is Jocelyn Vera, our co-organizer, and we're organizing for adequate funding for food access, housing, and other social services. So, of course, no one in Alameda County goes hungry. We're also organizing for targeted aid and protections for low-income families, immigrant communities, workers, and students that are most impacted by hunger, poverty, and racism. And we're also organizing for robust investment in our local food systems, small food businesses, urban agriculture, and sustainable transportation for food distribution. And then finally, we're also advocating and organizing for fair wages and benefits for food system and care workers and all workers, honestly, so that they have money to access food, as well as end the practices that keep essential workers in very precarious situations. But if you want to learn more about our organizing work, you can visit our new organizing website, which is down at the bottom. It's accfb.org/organize. And we can go on to the next slide. And then here is Jessica and mine's contact information in English and Spanish. Um, and you can also stay tuned for more information about our October 7th Organizing Leadership Academy at Cherryland Elementary School. Our organizing team and our policy and advocacy team is launching a 19 session Organizing Leadership Academy to develop skills. This will be one of the trainings, but one of 19. And then we're doing it hybrid at a classroom in Cherryland Elementary Schools on Tuesdays. And unfortunately, it's like at 8:30 to like 10 or 10:30. But we will like record them and then we'll post them up on our YouTube page where we have a lot of our other trainings and events and recordings. But that should be a really rich educational leadership school that we're actually launching. And then if you're interested, you can email me. My email is right here, and then we can get you like signed up or maybe your kids if they're, have some free time and want to learn about organizing and advocacy and policy and develop skills. And then we also have like a lots of like volunteer organizers and advocates coming into the office every day that we train. So if you know anyone or you yourself is interested or want to take a tour, feel free to email us. And then on the left, if you want to like include your story, you can scan the QR code on the left, and then we can share that with policymakers. And then on the right, you can scan this to learn and get more information about joining our food justice organizing task force, where you'll learn about building power and popular education and organizing in coalitions and organizing creative activities, actions, and events. And then lastly, these are different ways to plug in. You can attend our Organizing Leadership Academy and trainings that I just mentioned. You can take action with us by signing up for action alerts by just Googling action alerts in ACCFB. You can sign our petitions, make calls to your decision makers during key votes, which we'll send you emails about. Because again, Jessica, as she mentioned, it's not easy to track all this. And then you can also speak out at public meetings. We took a number of volunteers and agencies to last week's meeting to, participate in the Board of Supervisors meeting. And you can also join some of our coalitions that we're a part of and bring your networks, faith groups, unions, youth, and neighborhood associations to grow community power. Like I mentioned, we're part of like housing coalitions because we don't want rent go up because then that will limit food access. We're also part of the Ice Out of Dublin coalition and of course lots of food access and food justice coalitions as well. And then you can stay connected with us, of course, through our last slide and our emails. And then you can also build leadership together with us by becoming either a volunteer organizer or maybe even becoming a volunteer legislative coordinator with Jessica or Ezer and tracking the minutes and the meetings and and working alongside them. But yeah, that brings us closer to the end of our presentation. It was supposed to go until 7. We're at 6:33. So we'll open it up for questions if anyone has any. Jessica, did you want to mention any like final words before we take questions?
No, yeah, no.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing those last words, Stressword. Actually, yes, another thing I was going to mention was our team likes doing site visits, not just with our partner agencies. We have almost 400, so we have not gotten around to visiting all of them. I don't know if Jessford has. I haven't. But we don't only meet with our partner agencies throughout the county. We also meet with other orgs. We have very close relationships with other orgs. Some of you that are here today that are not our partner agencies. So we love doing that. We love going in person, seeing your site, especially if it's a partner agency. We like to see where the food is being distributed. And a lot of even our partners, a lot of them don't realize we have a policy team. And so that's why we like to go in and do that, introduce ourselves, what our team does. And that's how we've started a lot of our very close relationships. And we've realized and we've learned that a lot of them didn't even know we exist. So that's another plug too. If you'd like us to visit us or even just a quick Zoom call, please let us know. Yeah, we'll follow up.
Thanks, Jessica. Well, we can take any questions if there are any, and we just wanted to thank everyone for their patience.
I don't have a question. I just want to keep acknowledging you two and the hard work you're doing, and thank you, thank you, thank you. 'Cause it takes a village to keep marching the streets. I'm old. I'm 65, and we marched down Telegraph Avenue after the Vietnam War, but we made stuff happen. So I just get so inspired when I see young folks. You guys are going to carry the torch, and you're going to make sure that we have food justice for all. No one should go hungry. And we have to make a change. So I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. We really appreciate you and all of your neighbors as well. Yeah, are there any other questions or reflections or anything that people wanted to discuss? You can put it in the chat.
Just one last thing. I want to encourage folks like you already did to show up at the Board of Supervisors, to send the email, to call them. They're still looking to hear. The vote hasn't happened yet on Measure W. They have a estimated time, but they're still going to listen to our voices. So make your voices heard. Our supervisors are pretty open to always hearing from their constituents. So we voted for them. Make sure they hear what we have to say.
As Donna mentioned, is really a good, great presentation. It's reflect us to get where how we go and how we reach out all those food safety and food safety nets, how we provide the food to our community. This all and obviously the double major fund. We are still talking at the bed project has a good connection with the supervisors, and we have coming Thursday some of the supervisor in our office for the lunch. So we are taking the lobby for the double field. Let's see how it goes. But it's really effective presentations. Thank you so much for providing all the highlights. It's give me a really a sense of where we're going to target to talk to the supervisor to. It's a right time actually to go there. Thank you. Thank you so much, Batavia.
Thank you, Usha. Appreciate you. Yeah, any other questions or reflections? Well, any in the chat? We'll wait a minute, and if not, can let folks have dinner.
And I don't know how this works, Stressword. I know I see on my end, some folks are on the webinar side. I've never seen this happen before. So some are like split. You can't see them here. But I'm sure we'll do an official follow-up so everyone has our info if anything else comes up. Um, yeah, we have like a weird split. We have some folks on webinar, so we can't see their boxes here.
Well, I
Um,
can. I know that Kimberly put in the comment if you like click
on the
Q&A.
chat.
Yeah. And then so
Oh,
Kimberly
on the
just like
Q&A.
said
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Eden United Church of
Oh,
Christ,
yeah,
thank
I
you
did
for
see
bringing
Kimberly's
awareness and
name.
advocacy opportunities. especially for
Thank
us
you,
here in the
Kimberly.
unincorporated area. Thanks for being here, Kimberly. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Kimberly. And yeah, we'll make an official follow-up email too. If anything comes up, please do reach out to us.
Cool. We'll give it 30 more seconds or so, and then we'll let folks go.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nicholas, for being here.